Hello, everyone, and welcome to Friday Facts number 380, Remote View. I'm Exterminator, and thank you for stopping in today to go over this with me. And this one is really, really good. Again, I don't know, there may be one or two that are like as flashy and, mind-blowing as the elevated rails. But even those that aren't are still really good. So this one is excellent, and it basically is like fulfills absolutely everything on my wish list in regards to remote view. So what do they mean by remote view? This is obviously, so like when you go into map view and then you zoom in the map, this allows you to zoom in to like a normal world view, but it's through the map, and then you can do some interactions with that. But it is limited in 1.1. They've basically like I had like a mental list, and I went over a few times in my stream as well with my viewers, like what my top things would be to be able to do in the map view in 2.0 in the expansion, and they've basically hit every single one of those things and more. This is just absolutely fantastic. So let's just get into it here. Remote view. Basically, they just go into a little bit of the history of it that they explained in the 260 or 362. Sorry, the reasoning to improve the remote in Ghost building as it became more important with Spidertron's present, and then with the introduction of planets and space platforms in the Space Age expansion, obviously it's important to be able to remotely interact with other planets and with the space platform, because you just can't be everywhere simultaneously. So the goal is to be able to use remote view for everything you can do locally. The motivation is also to remove any or as many inconsistencies as possible between the local and remote buildings so your muscle memory works the same everywhere, which is really great. Just like a quick thing to hit on here, for me, this really kind of hit home, because it's, there's some stuff you can do in the map, but there's other things that there are some workarounds for, but it's kind of tedious and maybe not super intuitive. For example, if you want to like turn an inserter or something, you have to like take a ghost or a copy of it and then point it the other direction, or like decon it first and then place a new one. Or if you want to change recipes and assemblers, you have to like blueprint over it, like create a blueprint and then put the blueprint over it, and it's kind of tedious and annoying. But they go into basically some of that right here. And this is one of the biggest things for me that I've wanted and that I've been frustrated with in the past that you couldn't do. And this is remote opening. So currently you can't remote open, assembling machines or chests, or cargo wagons is like a big one for me. But you can use a blueprint trick, which is what I just went into essentially. So they implemented remote opening of every entity. This was only possible for train stops and locomotives in 1.1. And this allows you to configure anything in the entity, but obviously you can't just teleport your inventory items there. So yeah, so like you can't just take stuff from your inventory and put it in there, because obviously that's kind of overboard. But you can open it and you can create filters, you can create limits, which is really all you would need to do remotely, at least. And that's just absolutely fantastic. And then you can see here, notice the ghost picker on the left side in remote view. So yeah, you can like use this to basically take a ghost, like a ghost picker with like Q or something, and you can like set place stuff or set filters. Again, though, you don't like get free items, it's not taking it from your inventory, but the fact you can open chests and open assemblers and open cargo wagons remotely through the map view is absolutely fantastic. So then we move into ghost items. So the need for working with items remotely led to the ability to add fuel to stuck locomotives and remove items from the wrong places, and add upgrade remove modules remotely. So that's like kind of a summary of this whole section. And then players can create ghost items by clicking a ghost cursor in an inventory slot, which is delivered by local construction bots. So to get into this a little more, you can see that here they're just removing the modules from the machine remotely, or placing them even. So they place them first and they get rid of them. So you like hit Q over that to get your ghost picker, place them in, and then I assume you would just right click, maybe, is probably what they're doing, and it just gets rid of it, or maybe middle click, because that clears filters. I'm not sure on the hotkey, obviously, but either way, that is just super nice. And then also you can remote rotate things. So, you can just rotate belts or something remotely, which is super nice. The rotation order also doesn't get the nice feedback of whether the belt or rotate connections or not. And then we go down here. So We come down here a little bit. While solving yet another problem related to this, we realize that making rotation just an instant action might be the way out. It doesn't break the immersion too much and simplifies everything greatly for us and for players, so we did that. So, I mean, I can see this maybe being a little controversial, that people don't want to, that maybe it seems like a little too cheaty to be able to rotate entities remotely. I don't really see that as being too big of a deal. It's not like you're picking them up into your inventory and then placing them somewhere else. Like, if you want to pick them up, you still have to use robots to decon them and ghosts to place them. But being able to rotate them remotely, I think, is super nice, instead of having to like deconstruct it and then take a ghost, turn it the right way, place it. It's just super tedious, and I think the quality of life aspect of it will, at least for me, overtake any feeling of cheatiness that it may give. So we go here to opening ghosts, and this is super nice. So once they allowed the remote entity configuration, a new annoying problem popped up. Locally, you might be used to just building an assembling machine and configuring it right away, but with remote building, obviously you have to use ghosts, and then you would have to wait until the robot builds it and then finally be able to configure it. Surprisingly though, it actually wasn't super hard for them to allow you to open ghosts and configure them. And this is this is one of those things that was not on my wish list just because I didn't really think of it, to be honest. But it's so nice. So you can just place a ghost and you can just edit it just like you could edit something that was placed right next to you. And this way you can like go down stuff, change the recipe, and then again, as they showed above, you can like put modules in there and such. And this is just absolutely fantastic. And then we come down here a little bit more to blueprinting Spidertrons and equipment. So you can now blueprint Spidertrons, but on top of that, you can also blueprint equipment within it. So then you can have robots, will place a Spidertron obviously, but then also place the equipment within the Spidertron for you without having to build one locally, like right next to you, and then set the inventory stuff, and then, or the grid stuff, and then blueprint that down. So again, just super simple, way less steps to do so. And then they say the main technical cost was to add equipment ghosts, so when you blueprint the spider robot, it's going to install the equipment. Yeah. The extra bonus is that you can put a ghost equipment into your armor now, so you don't have to do one-time orders for things for armor, which happens so much more in the expansion because of the quality. Yes, so the quality is an excellent point, but also even in the current state of the game, I get a little annoyed, like when I die, well, which for me is quite often, but when I die, I have to set requests, like I want 1 armor, I want 2 fusion reactors, I want 2 exos, and then once I get those, I then have to clear all the requests, because otherwise, when I put the armor on and put those things in my armor, I would just be getting more of those items I was requesting, right? But you no longer have to do that. You can just set the ghosts, basically requests, within your armor, and the robots will just bring it to you, presumably put it in your armor directly, maybe in your inventory. I'm not quite sure on that for your character, but either way, you don't have to be setting requests for this stuff, which is just fantastic. And then they go into ghost entities on ghost tiles. So the feature is important for platform building, allowing players to place ghost entities on top of ghost tiles, reducing the need to wait for physical construction. So again, this comes into play for something like they show here, but also I think a lot for like land bridges with rails, which obviously that part may not be as prevalent since we have elevated rails coming in the expansion. But even if you did want to do that, where you place landfill and then place the rails just on the landfill, you can now do that because you can ghost down the landfill. You don't have to wait for it to be built. And then you can place ghost rails on top of that to be built, which you can do that. Like, technically it kind of works that way now, but you have to have a blueprint to do it. You can't just like hand place the ghosts or whatever. You can have a blueprint that has tiles ghosted under it. But again, that's just more tedious. And then deconstruction. So they say that the Alt-D shortcut for a deconstruction planner is part of my muscle memory now, but still the inconsistency of being able to use the mine button to remove entities locally but not remotely was there. So now you can basically, in quotes, mine entities remotely to mark them for decon. So you don't have to use a decon planner. You can just right-click over stuff as if you were going to pick it up, basically, and you're obviously not picking it up, but it will mark it for decon. So that's just super nice. You don't have to just even with the hotkey, you don't have to be consistently pulling out your decom planner. If there's just like, one or two things you want to get rid of, boom, just right click on them and they're set for decon, which is super nice. Just less switching between stuff basically. And then they come down to remote view context. So with the introduction of planets and space platforms, players basically need a way to move the locations remotely, move to the locations remotely. The game now features integrated remote view with planet and platform selection on the left, making it easier to switch places. So to go into this a little more, well, first off, we can see a few new icons here. So this is space map. I would assume this is the space platform. This is some sort of radar or something or other. I'm not quite sure. But that's basically what I summarized here. And then you can see this, but then they say, which leads to the GUI where you can see a preview of the different places and have a way to jump there through the view button. So you can see that. Sorry, I was seeing. I stopped reading. I thought this was something new. No, they didn't spoil any new enemies or something. I thought maybe they would here, but you can see here, novice. They have some information, which actually this is really good info. This is something that like I don't think is really displayed anywhere else currently, which is interesting. So we'll go. Okay, so let me continue this, and then I'm going to deep dive a little bit into this stuff over here. So they say space map, and you have overview, all your planets, something here, space platform maybe, or I mean, this looks like dang, what's the name of that little robot guy? I forget, but they have it all blurred out for obvious reasons. But once we started playing, it became obvious that this system is horrible. So basically, it just goes back to the having too many steps problem, where you essentially would run into a thing where you would go planets GUI, select planet, view, close, planet, platforms GUI, select platform, view, close, to go back and forth, and it was just, it's just kind of a lot to do. Also, the preview in the planets GUI kind of lures you into trying to do stuff in there directly as if it was a remote view already, so we repeatedly felt stupid for trying to click into the non-functional preview widget. So yeah, this is the preview widget of it. Like, this is the preview. This is not like the actual map view, even though it looks like the map view. And the solution was just to integrate everything together. So whenever you open the remote view, which is the map, it always shows the planet platform selection on the left, so you can use remote view normally and do everything, but also switch between planets. So you can see now when you open the map view, it adds another GUI here that is essentially what we just saw, but simplified. So you are actually in the map view now, and then you can select your planets or platforms. So there's actually a lot to unpack here. And I'm just going to finish this paragraph here, and then we're going to look at some stuff closely. So this is the reason why the access to the planet platform travel and platform creation is in a little bit of an unintuitive place. So yeah, it may not be super intuitive that this is how you get to it immediately, but it does make more sense in the long run, and I do agree with them. They say they think will be better, and I agree. I think it just is more intuitive, and it just makes more sense and is less steps to take. And then they say, P.S. we use the same strategy for trains, so it is just a glued piece of GUI to the remote view, so you can interact with the world around the selected train the usual way instead of seeing just the map, which is otherwise non-interactable. So fantastic stuff. But what I really want to get into, and if you're like, you've like stopped paying attention or something, definitely come back to watching this for now, because there's some really interesting stuff. So first off, if we look here, we see processing unit productivity 7. Now we already knew that, like, they already discussed the productivity, but I like seeing that. Okay, at least goes up to 7. I think they were infinite. I don't know if they were infinite researches, but yeah. So this is processing unit productivity. Also, these are some crazy rails, but you'll notice it is actually pretty distinctive which rails are elevated, which I was curious about in the map view. But you can see the elevated rails are like, I can't tell if it's like thicker or just darker, but at least for me, they do make it really clear which ones are elevated. Like, I can just look at this and be like, okay, this is a ramp, and then this is an elevated rail here. These are all elevated rails. And then like here, be like, oh, this is a ramp up and down, I think. I mean, that's what it has to be. These have to be ramps, right? Which is super nice. And you can just kind of follow the ramps too. But I really like that. Even more so than that, though, if we zoom back out here and go up, there's some interesting information. So you can see novice. They say day-night cycle, 7 minutes. I mean, I don't think that's changed, but that was good information that we maybe didn't know straight up before. Gravity, magnetic field. So this is something that caught my eye. I don't know if this is just random statistics. Like maybe I'm reading too much into it, and they're just putting statistics in there just for information that has nothing to do with anything else. But I am curious that they list a magnetic field because this was something that was never really brought up at all before. So I wonder how this is maybe going to play into expansion. Again, I could just be overthinking things, but pretty interesting. Pressure as well is also interesting. Solar power in atmosphere. So I don't know if this is just kind of a different way of saying how much solar power you can generate, but it specifically says in atmosphere. So maybe there's something like we can launch solar panels into space or the atmosphere. Or yeah, this is interesting. Evolution factor, pretty straightforward. Solar power in space, which you can see. Oh, sorry. So in atmosphere, meaning on the planet. I misread that. This would make sense if I'd read this too. Oh, this meant literally in the atmosphere. But yeah, so this means like on the planet, I would assume, and this means in space. So it is more in space. And then we also see, so we have some connections here. These are all our planets. Again, I'm not quite sure what this is unless it's the platform. They did, again, blur them out. But you also get this interesting information here that shows what it contains. So nothing new on novice, enemy, or resource-wise, which makes sense. But if we were to see one of these other planets, I'm sure it would show us a bunch of new stuff. So I just thought that was really interesting, particularly like the magnetic field and pressure, because that just seems like something that is kind of irrelevant unless it's not irrelevant, you know? Like, why list it unless it has a meaning? I mean, maybe it's just cool details, which is totally fine, but I don't know. I'd like to hear what you guys think on that. And then we're almost done here. The ghost shader. So essentially they change how ghosts look. The appearance of ghost entities was enhanced to improve clarity and differentiate from real entities. So ghosts currently in 1.1 are like pretty light colored and like very transparent in comparison, obviously, to non-ghost entities. And they can be a little tricky to see sometimes and look a little cluttered. And then they say, basically, visual elements like shadows and shimmering distortions were added to create a more realistic ghost appearance. And then tinting is used to provide information such as when ghosts have been assigned a robot. So this is super nice. So they say, you know, to tint or not to tint the behemoth biter in the room is a color change tint. Many entities are only distinguished by their color. For instance, in surgeon logistic chests, if the ghosts are tinted, it would be more difficult to tell these entities apart when they are ghosted, or when they are ghosts. However, throughout our testing, it became increasingly obvious that distinguishing the ghosts as a whole from real entities was by far more important overall. We tend to care more for whether it is a ghost or not rather than what type of ghost it is, which makes sense. So it is a little harder to tell what the inserter, like what kind of inserter it is, which could be a problem. I mean, if you built the blueprint yourself, that shouldn't really be a problem because you should know what you put there. But if, you know, you're taking blueprints from somewhere else, you know, whatever they may be, then obviously that may be a problem if you're not really sure like what type of inserters these are. I mean, you can tell, like, this is a fast inserter, this is a stack inserter. It just takes some, you know, you kind of have to like concentrate a little more with your eyes. They kind of go into the anatomy of ghosts. Just basically, I mean, we can just kind of look at the pictures here. Yellow illustrates the added rectangle margins, which allow texture to distort without clipping. So it seems like they just kind of clean them up and stuff. And then they say, to get the actual numbers to drive our shimmering, I decided to use simplex noise. Factorio map coordinates can get huge on top of me cramming them into whatever spare video memory I could find. The simplest solution is to tile the effect every few chunks to accommodate that I had to customize the inner workings for simplex noise and account for tiling, it seems. So this is a comparison. So before the update, many of these were difficult to make out. For instance, setting up a refinery remotely would really strain your eyes. So this is what we have now, and like, you know, we're used to it, but this is pretty hard to see in retrospect. Like when comparing it, this is pretty hard to see. Whereas now, it is very clear everything that is here. But it's still clear that it's not actually a place entity. So I think this is a very nice medium they've struck, a good compromise between visuals. They do go into like what the cost is for this. So they say while the GPU can perform Herculean amounts of operations extremely fast, the connection through which your PC sends instructions is very narrow. This hologram effect is all fine and dandy, but it makes the game choppy. But if it makes the game choppy, it's no good. Therefore, keeping the size of each instruction low is paramount. And then they just say, luckily, standard Factorio draw call had several unused numbers. For very specific things such as tree leaves moving in the wind, this allowed me to bit pack all the necessary information in without inflating the size of draw calls whatsoever, which is great. And then the last thing, which is I did touch on briefly in the summary a minute ago, but this is actually a really nice feature. Since we now tint the ghost, we can use it to provide a little bit of extra information to the player. Specifically, the ghost will change tint when they have assigned a robot to construction, when they've been assigned a robot. So you can tell at a glance if there's a robot on the way, or if you have required materials in the network. So you can see here they place it, and it seems like, so yeah, when it goes through like that thing, at first when I read this, I thought this was just like a slow load, but what this is actually doing is it's showing like boom, 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 all these are then being assigned robots for them. So, and I assume that would also mean you have the required materials. I'm not 100% sure on that, but this definitely, like as it goes through them, is assigning a robot to each one, which is super nice to see as well. Now they may not all get assigned different robots, we don't have enough, but also remember that they did make robot building and movement and stuff smarter, which really helps. But overall, guys, this is just fantastic. I absolutely love these updates, and man, just all the stuff you can now do remotely, opening assemblers, cargo wagons. I mean, those were some of my top things. Rotating items, interacting with ghosts, so you can set the recipes, and then putting in modules, taking out modules, the easy like click decom thing without a decom planner, placing on tiles. Everything is fantastic. I would love to hear what you guys think down below. You know, is there anything that they missed, do you think, that they should still add you can do remotely? You know, how do you feel about what they did add? And also I'm curious on your thoughts on these like little Easter egg type things, or maybe they're not Easter eggs at all, but this is just definitely information that was like not available before. So it's just interesting they're now showing it. But overall, I'm super excited. I cannot wait until next Friday Facts. I don't believe they gave us any sort of indication what it was going to be, so we'll just have to wait and see, but I'm sure it's going to be great. So as always, thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it. I hope you did enjoy, and if you did and are excited for all these features, go ahead and throw a like on the video if you don't mind, and any thoughts, questions, and stuff, leave them below. As always, I love reading all of your thoughts, and then if you're new, welcome, and feel free to subscribe to keep up with all future content. And until next time, I look forward to seeing you all, and do take care.